Oh, we don't have a
Sexton
quorum
coming?
now.
No, here's an apology.
I'll sit back at my old spot.
So we're waiting on a couple of elected. I'd like to welcome you to the meeting and advise that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the community via the City of Hobart's YouTube channel. For the purposes of recording, if elected members could wait for me to announce them before speaking, I'll request that your mobile devices be either turned off or put to silent. We have two apologies for tonight. It's Alderman Peter Sexton and Councillor Jax Ewan. And I would like to start by acknowledging country, as we always do, that in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. The minutes of our last meeting, held on the 26th of April, moved by the Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Are there any items for transfer? Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I have had a very good read of item 6 on the close, the Taste of Tasmania report. I don't believe that should be enclosed. There is reference to the persons we consulted. Those people that we consulted are very well known to be very closely associated with the Taste and have been associated with the Taste. I cannot see anything in that report that I believe that should be remaining closed. The funding and everything like that is always something that eventually gets into the public domain. So I'd like to move that into open.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe. Discussion?
Could I just get a comment from the Acting Director, please?
Mr. Short?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, through you, Lord Mayor, at the time when we undertook the consultation with stakeholders, we did suggest that the matter would be kept in confidence, but we've since talked to them knowing that it may well get moved into open this evening, and it is in order if Council wants to have the item moved into the open discussion, that is appropriate.
Okay, any further discussion? I'll put that motion to move the item into item 6 into the open. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Communication from the Chair. Yes, I do have one tonight. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the City's new Chief Executive Officer, Kelly Grigsby, to tonight's Council meeting. Kelly commenced today with the City of Hobart. She has been at the helm of the City of Wyndham, which is one of the country's fastest growing cities, for the last 6 years. Kelly is recognised in the local government sector around the country as innovative, results-focused and visionary leader, and we're very pleased to welcome Kelly here with her calibre and experience. So welcome to your first meeting, not necessarily up here this week, but I'd also like to acknowledge and thank very, very much Mr. Tim Short, who has been the acting in the role since April, and your knowledge and hard work and expertise has been greatly appreciated and is very much appreciated by the Council.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. So item 4 is notification of Council workshops. There have been none since we last met. Public question time. Are there any on notice? Public questions on notice?
No, Lord Mayor.
No, and any without notice from the floor? Public questions? There being none. Petitions, I think we do have one, and Mr. Short's going to read that out for us. Thank you.
Yes, we have one petition from Mr. Peter D. Hill of Rupert Avenue in Mount Stewart. The petitioners herewithin desire to have an avenue of trees planted in Rupert Avenue. The appropriate configuration, placement, species and timing of tree planting is to be determined by the council. And there are 24 signatories, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I move that be received and sent to the appropriate committee for consideration.
Okay, seconder for that motion, Alderman Thomas. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Consideration of supplementary items.
16, Lord Mayor.
Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Are there any... item 8 is indications of pecuniary or conflicts of interest. Are there any matters on the open agenda that any elected members would like to declare they have an interest in? None. We will move on, and we're now moving into acting as a planning authority, and I will invite Deputy Lord Mayor, Chair of the Planning Committee, to open item 9.1. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move this item for partial demolition, alterations and signage at 76 Liverpool Street.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, this is a well-known building on that corner, the National Australia Bank building. It's quite an impressive and imposing facade. And this is a fairly straightforward application, which is considered under the discretions of heritage and signage. Fundamentally, there's a shifting of some of the windows and the ATM at the Elizabeth Street side of Elizabeth Street Mall of the building, the removal of tiles, awnings, a door and a window as well, with the facade facing the Elizabeth Street Mall, and then the ATM will be brought into the new foyer of that Elizabeth Street Mall frontage. So, as I said, historic heritage code and signage codes were the only two discretions. There were no representations, and it was deemed by the heritage officers as a suitable alteration. So move that for approval, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9.2 is 21B Enterprise Road, and a whole range of other addresses there, but Enterprise Road, Sandy Bay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is for 20 multiple dwellings and associated works, and the recommendation is for refusal based on 3 grounds. And
seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
I think all elected members have received the updated recommendation from committee. Lord Mayor, this is something that had come to us or had been advertised previously. Then it required re-advertising because of changes, significant enough changes to the application. Essentially, this is at the top of Sandy Bay, right along the hill's face, if you like, and quite a large subdivision for 20 multiple dwellings and associated works. There were 8 performance criteria not satisfied according to the planners. Oh, sorry, there were 8 performance criteria, and according to the planners, there was only one, which was traffic. There's going to be a considerable amount of traffic movement with 20 new dwellings of 3-bedroom apartments, and it was deemed that by the planners that traffic was really the only discretion that was something that would hold at the tribunal if it were contested. However, there were 213 representors, and we heard 4 outstanding presentations at committee just before this council meeting. And I might add, we had requested for an extension of time, and unfortunately the extension of time wasn't granted until today's date, which really put a lot of pressure on the planners and I must say on the representors to put forward their arguments. So the representors argued quite vociferously and clearly in relation to things like the building envelope and the information that was provided that wasn't really credible or accurate. So things like overshadowing, if you take it to comply with the actual contours of the land, it was likely to be 5 times longer than suggested in places. It was necessary to dig down to comply into a quite hard bedrock, and significant quarrying would need to occur. Now, some of those are things that we can consider tonight, but certainly clearly articulated this evening at committee meeting. Clearing of the site was, and I know this is of great interest to you, Lord Mayor, the clearing of the site for bushfire protection is to create a bushfire protection zone was quite vast. It was a rating, the lowest rating that is compliant for the flame zone of a BAL of 12.5, which is the lowest permissible, when in fact there could be. So with that comes maximum clearing, and we're clearing into a biodiversity zone and into a waterway zone as well. So really, with some changes, it could have been a lot more sensitive to the area. Finally, the other reason for refusal, which makes up this motion before us tonight, is that the proposal does not meet the acceptable solution or the performance criteria relating to siting and scale of units 14, 15, 16, 17, 19 and 20, and the combined height of the retaining wall. Lord Mayor, this is a huge grab for as many dwellings in one site. It is not sensitive to the environment at the fringe of the city, nor is it acceptable in terms of density in comparison with other things. But as I said, there are three points for refusal, and I strongly urge Council to accept these reasons.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Alderman Zuko.
Lord Mayor, I've been on this council nearly 30 years. I want to say this, as everyone knows, I'm a pro-development elected member, have been for many years. I look at this development here, and as everyone knows, for years I've actually been pushing the Barrow and pushing for increased density right across the city, for increased housing. This is has to be the worst DA I have seen in my 30 years in any form of trying to increase density and in any form of trying to overdevelop a site. I read the report, Lord Mayor. I went down to the site, I had a look. I'm one, and everyone knows I'm open to listening to both sides of the argument, where it comes to developers or when it comes to the concerns of our citizens. I've got to say that yes, there are some concerned citizens, but my decision making is based on the planning scheme, but also sometimes goes beyond the planning scheme. There has been a number of times over the years, and Mr Noy's quite well aware of it, that I actually fought against officer recommendations for approval and refused, and was justified in the planning tribunal as well. I've got to also say that I'm actually quite concerned that the developer did not provide our staff an extension of time. As a lot of elected members have been around a while know, I've even pushed the Barrow for an extension of time on the floor of council, and we've actually stopped the council, the report, and sought an extension of time from the developer. But have a guess what? Zuko's not going to be moving that tonight, because as far as I'm concerned, I believe this developer should have, at least because of the contentious matter of this development, provided our officers with that. And there is no way known on this earth that even if our council officers had recommended for approval of this, I would have supported it, because when you actually get down to the nitty-gritty of the planning scheme, you get down to the nitty-gritty of the site, you get down to everything about this proposal, it's a way over development of the site. I've got to say, I really cannot understand why some developers just don't get it. I don't know whether it's got to do with money or whatever have you, but I know if I owned that parcel of land, Lord Mayor, I'd be putting up to this council 6 magnificent homes on the site and possibly make more money than these 20 would. There are some serious concerns there with traffic. There are some serious concerns with the report when you read the report. And I think the officers flagged those concerns. And to my point of view, when the officers are flagging concerns, there's got to be more to it. Lord Mayor, I believe that this council tonight must send a very strong message to this developer or any other developer that wants to come to council to increase their density. Because I've always said that I will support spot rezonings where appropriate. This one here, even if we had to consider it and it met the criteria of the planning scheme in all facets, I wouldn't support it.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, thank you. I would also very strongly support this, and I am one who usually stands against development when I think it is not right and appropriate. There was only one ground presented to us by council staff, and I'm so delighted and happy that we have added 2 more, one by Alderman Briscoe and the third one there, that gives it a stronger ground for our refusal. So I want to commend this to the council. Thank you very much.
Alderman Thomas.
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. I appreciate that tonight we're dealing with a planning matter and acting as a planning authority. And I'm no doubt that if these 20 sites, these 20 properties were built, that there would be a market for them. There's no doubt that in Hobart's over-demand-driven housing market, there would be probably a need for 20 more homes of reasonable construction and reasonable size. But I think, Lord Mayor, if I could move away from planning grounds for a minute and simply give a comment. We've spent a number of years in this council looking for a city with people in mind, a sense of place, a sense of balance, a sense of proportion. And this is just grossly overdone from the entrance, from the mere concept of that many trucks, those thousands of truck movements, with night and day blasting and extraction of rock and other material. And I think I went up to the site with Alderman Briscoe. It took him 15 minutes to find his way out of that area because of the dog legs that lead you back down to Churchill Avenue. I mean, if you can imagine trucks going through for, I don't know, it'd be a hell of a lot of months. But I think it's more than that. Even once developed, what do we want? Do we want to have, I mean, when you get a subdivision in this small, relatively small piece of land, which was sold some years ago, ideal for 4 homes. Ideal for 4 homes. Now we've got 20, and in many cases, a 3-bedroom. This is over-proportioned. The densification is completely wrong, but it calls the question. I spoke to the community before it was stopped last time and said, wouldn't it be good if you were able to meet with the developer and perhaps put your concerns out, speak to the developer what you might do in the future, or the developer might do in the future. Now that was left with a silence. They wouldn't, after a day or two they came back and said, no, we're not going to meet. And I thought, oh, well, that's the old ombudsman in me trying to get people to come to a reality which is very difficult in a planning matter. But here the developer is just as much to blame. And the people in their objections have been extremely professional in the presentations they've made to various councillors and aldermen. But the reality here is we cannot allow this to continue in Hobart which is, you know, still the jewel in the crown of real estate and it's the place for demand, we're still getting these ridiculous situations in which we have an incredible small piece, a relatively small piece of land, 20 homes. The developer's not going to talk to the community. Oh no, the developer's not going to go out and meet with the community, and the community doesn't want to meet with the developer. So we get landed with it, and the development control people get landed with it. I don't know why, Lord Mayor, we cannot get to a point. We talk about a city with people in mind, we talk about a city with balance, we talk about a city where we have a harmonious population, people who get on with each other, and both developers and applicants, developers and communities don't get together and we get landed with it in this room. So I just say, I don't know how we do it. We have these strategic plans, we meet with the community, we have months of community dialogue, and we talk about being a people together and united, and we turn around and nothing happens. So the developer comes through with an outrageously over-proportioned piece of development, and the community sits back there until a period of time, nobody speaks to each other, and it ends up with us. So clearly I'm going to vote against this.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Alderman Thomas referred to me trying to get out of the place. Getting there was quite an experience as well, and I parked at the top there, and I had a parking foul because I blocked the street because the road up there is so narrow. And it was good the officers came because we didn't have the planning report when we went. Alderman Thomas and I went and met the residents. It was good that the first one was traffic condition of refusal. And the history of the site is interesting as well. Because of the number of iterations of the planning scheme affecting this land, it actually had greater protection a few years ago, and the interim planning scheme gave it less protection. And there's only 2 of us left on council, I think, when we acquired heaps of land up there to protect the skyline, the bushland skyline. And no one ever thought that there would be further development above where Enterprise Road is now. No one in the right, would even have thought about it. And creating Bicentennial Park, I know there were some people in council upset about that because we took the tram money to buy it, buy some of it. So all I can say is that we have to keep our eyes open to when there is changing in planning schemes, and presumably the statewide planning scheme will be facilitated in, and that may have less controls. But in this case, I agree totally with what the previous speakers have said. It's an inappropriate development. Density is greater. We have gross impacts on the neighbour, let alone all the neighbours along the road to get there. It must be that something wrong that we can't insist on extra time when not enough time is given to looking at those representations, because they weren't trivial representation. They were well thought out representations. They had professional advice behind them, and yet we're caught having to do a report in a couple of days. And even when you read the report, particularly the ones about maybe inaccurate levels, even the planning officer said, well, there's no way he could tell whether it was inaccurate or not from his looking at systems that we have, or the council have, found there was a discrepancy, but he couldn't do anything more about it. So, because of the lack of time. Presumably, if he had more time, they had more time, the planning officers, we would have sought independent surveying information advice. So I'm glad the officers have come out to be against the proposal on traffic grounds, and I'm glad the planning committee added 2 more grounds, which I think are significant.
Councillor Sherlock was up first, I think.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think I'll just start actually by commending the community on this, the residents that I went and saw yesterday, and the whole community, actually, over 100 of them to my understanding, that came together professionally to put forward a presentation, as well as all the issues that came along with why this particular application was just should be refused. And I think one particular comment that I will take away from this, which was actually just said here in this chamber just now, is that I also don't understand why some developers don't get it. I think that is a real gold piece that has been said in this chamber tonight, and it can be applied to various different applications and development applications that will come to this chamber. And from speaking to the community yesterday, I was really quite surprised about the time frame, and then the repercussions of that is that our officers also do not get the chance to assess a particular application accordingly, and then add to the issue as suggested by the community is the inaccuracy of some pieces of data. So for me, all those things, and including the fact that what has already been said around this table today, I would also support the refusal of this application. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, thank you. The initial officer's recommendation only had one recommendation for refusal, one grounds for refusal. When we've heard the description and the experience and that they've suffered, the experience that they went through, the local residents, to get to this position, it's been pretty dramatic for them. But there was only one ground for refusal, but there were numerous other grounds raised by the community, and I think those grounds were just as genuine and just as serious as the grounds that the officers brought to us for refusal. So I think this indicates to me that there's something wrong with the planning scheme, that the planning scheme doesn't have enough teeth to protect the residents in whatever area from inappropriate development. So, and I know the planning scheme's a complex beast, and it's being reviewed all the time. We've got a new planning scheme, coming at us. But how do we get a planning scheme that actually represents the community? Let's hope the local area provisions will, protect communities a bit more than they've had in the past. Luckily, there was a ground for refusal of this development, but I would have been devastated to have seen this proposal come to me if I had lived in the area as well. To think that 20 units and all the traffic and the ground cracking and the quarrying that you'd have to put up with for a long time could have been, could go through a planning process and get approval. But luckily it didn't get approval because there was one ground that is strong enough to refuse it. But I also commend the residents of this area for putting together a really good presentation tonight. They clearly had strong motivation to represent themselves and their community with regard to this proposal tonight. So I voted against it in the committee, so I'll vote against it tonight. And this could be one of the first recommendations to council which is unanimous when it comes to a planning decision. I think it's only happened maybe once before we've had unanimous decision, but we'll see. I mean, with regard to a planning application for multi-residential tenancies.
Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think we've had a few unanimous decisions on things, but regardless, Lord Mayor, I think we get plenty of developments that come before us that push the boundaries of discretions, and I don't always think that's a bad thing. I think that's how you get a city that grows. That's how you get a city that meets some of the demands that the city is facing as the city itself's growing. But then sometimes you have developments such as this one, which I think just go completely. They're not treading the line of the boundaries. They're completely. They've danced past it, and I think it's something that was clear to anybody that went and visited. And I think most people did go and visit the site and talk to the residents. It was just so completely out of what anybody would define as appropriate for the area, especially with the traffic impact, the amount of land clearing, the discrepancies with the topography of the land. I think there was just so much going on there. To be honest, the only thing I'm surprised about was that there wasn't more reasons for refusal on the report. But and as I said in committee, normally I'm the first one to advocate that we defer and look for ways to mediate a mutually beneficial solution. But I think in this case, it's just so clearly out of whack. I think, if there was half a dozen large premium houses proposed for that site, we might have some discretions there and we might be having a conversation. Even if it was 10, I think, but the amount of dwellings that they've fit on there, the impact that's going to have on traffic, the size of the dwellings they've put on there, they're not units, they're large houses, and the amount of land clearing that will be required, including on other people's property for the development to go ahead. It was just, I think there's This might be, whether it's one of the only ones or one of the few, but I think this might be a time that the council will be rightfully recommending for refusal. And hopefully the developers do come back with another application that is more in keeping with the what I think most people would expect for the area. But I was happy to support the recommendation in council, and I was happy to support the amendments as well.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I might just say a couple of quick things. Look, just really to endorse the comments that everyone's made around the table. I met with a group of residents a couple of months ago, and the stress that was really clear in the room, it really was of great concern, and I think will remain a great concern to many of the residents until they know that there's definitely a different proposal being put forward. I, like a few people have mentioned around the table, am surprised of the number of that there was only the one refusal point recommended by the staff, and I think that is because it does have the wrong zoning for this site. I think that happened a few years ago, and my understanding from talking with the director is that we will be the Tasmanian Planning Commission will be sending our statewide planning scheme back to us in the next few months. That will have all the local area provisions, including the provisions that say that this area is zoned in a residential, which is, I believe, the wrong zoning for this area. And there will be an opportunity for members of the community, including from this area, to have their say. For 60 days, the statewide planning scheme will be advertised, and there is an opportunity to come forward and say, the zoning's wrong here, it needs to be this other zoning, and that will be something that community can come to us, and we can consider that and then take that back to the Tasmanian Planning Commission if we do feel that, for whatever reason, this has the wrong zoning. And it certainly sounds, for a whole range of reasons, the visual impact, the biodiversity impact, the bushfire impact, etc., the bulk for this location, that it is the wrong set of rules for this site. So I'm a bit hopeful that that will provide an opportunity maybe to correct things for the long term, but I'm very pleased that there's so much support around the table for the recommendation. Thank you. Did you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. Lord Mayor, I think those points are really valid about the Tasmanian Planning Commission's proposal to bring that back for discussion, and I know full well that the residents are very keen to take a good look at that current zoning, which kind of slipped under the radar in a sense. Tonight has been an amazing discussion about those really important things that we're here to consider with planning. And we know that the stress is palpable for a lot of residents, not only in this application, but we've seen this time and time again. And this passionate discussion on planning, I would like to see more of, because we've had Alderman Thomas talk about the way that we should look at planning perhaps from a values base rather than just looking at it from, having to consider things in an ad hoc manner. It's quite frustrating when we're not thinking of the big picture, and I know the next item will be a discussion around that as well. The importance of getting a good outcome when developers and local residents can get together. We've seen it happen on a number of occasions, but unfortunately it was really a matter of we're not going to get a good outcome, but only through talking can you get good outcomes and something that's a lot more acceptable from most corners. This is a huge land grab, or a grab to develop at all costs, and certainly the reasons for refusal should stand if they are tested at the tribunal. But I'm sure that this will be a good reason for refusing something that just doesn't pass the test that it should.
Okay, I'll put that recommendation for refusal. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Okay, item 10, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes, I'll move item 10, Lord Mayor, which is the proposal proposal to amend the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy.
Seconded by Councillor Duttor. I think he's had his hand up first.
Lord Mayor, this is one of a trickle, it might be gathering to a flow of requests by neighbouring councils or councils within the Southern Tasmanian region to alter the urban growth boundary. And we have this request from the Brighton City Council to amend the urban growth boundary to allow for a 110 lot subdivision. And the request is triggered because the Department of Education, in their wisdom, acquired a site, a 10-hectare parcel of land to build a new Brighton High School, even though there is an existing a farm school at the Jordan River. However, that was the case. There are educational and other community facilities expected to be built in existing residential zoned areas. And the expanded growth of the urban fringe causes more pressure on existing road networks and requires more special services. So if we look at the urban growth boundary, it's a nominal boundary if you like, but it is used to guide councils, developers, where it is appropriate to build or not. And one of the frustrations that we discussed at committee last week, and I don't think there was anybody against the frustration that the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy is outdated and it's not keeping pace with the demands of the continued growth and pressure on these boundaries. Now, we know that there was a proposal to have 50% infill development and greenfield development, and that has or the amount of inner city infill development has not kept pace with the developments on our boundaries. So unfortunately there was this ongoing pressure, and we need guidance from the state government. So as you can see, part 3 is, given the increased requests relating to the urban growth boundary review and the demands for dwellings, the council seek urgent action by the state government to fast-track review of the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy review. I would suggest that we, now that we have a new premier, the premier has renewed his spot, has been voted in again, and we have we will have another planning minister if the polls are correct. That we urgently meet with the premier and the new planning minister in order to express our concerns about this Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy being slow to update. It's time it is updated. It's really important that this is updated so that the fairness for building and development is quite clear. And I spoke to my counterpart, the chair of city planning at Brighton today. Same sort of frustrations. They want advice on the regional land use strategy just as much as we do. All of the Southern Tasmanian councils, and I think the urban councils, all requested the government to do this, and as an election request. So it's really incumbent on the new government to do that.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I have no issue with number 3, and I think the Deputy was right. I think it was unanimously agreed number 3 is that as an amendment. We have got communication today pointing out that there was supposed to be 5-year reviews and from 2010, which haven't been done. So, and we're in a situation now where, from Brighton's planning officer's point of view, it is justifiable for the small parcel land to be rezoned. and made within the urban growth boundary. We are not a decision-making body with respect to this. I do believe, and perhaps I could ask you through Lord Mayor a question, did we just recently seek an extension to our urban growth boundary?
Mr. Noy, did you want to answer that?
Yes, that's correct. A modest area in West Hobart.
Thank you. And probably a supplementary question, did Brighton Council have any objections to that?
Mr. Noy.
I don't believe so.
Thank you. Now that proves the point that we should be writing to the Minister, pointing out that the review has to be done quickly, and if there is any impacts for the Minister to take in consideration of those impacts. But Brighton Council didn't object to our extension or request to extend the urban growth boundary, so why should we? Now, there is a lot of pressure in Brighton, and generally Brighton property prices are a lot lower than Hobart. Land is a lot cheaper. Building houses are modest houses there, and I always think it's wrong. I think we should have no opinion on this, so I'll be foreshadowing a motion, I could do it, probably a motion, foreshadow a motion that we do not comment about Brighton's proposal to extend their urban growth boundary, but also to include number 3 as well.
Zuko.
Lord Mayor, if that comes up, that's what I'll be supporting. So much for getting things unanimous, because I doubt very much this is going to be unanimous tonight. Lord Mayor, I actually put the spanner in the works through you, Lord Mayor, to the appropriate officer. Can someone please advise me where the proposed rail corridor is to go to? Does anyone know?
Mr. Noy, if you want to answer that.
Yes, I believe it's to Claremont or just beyond Claremont.
Brighton? Wasn't it Brighton?
No,
Claremont?
not to Brighton.
But they can extend it eventually to Brighton, can't they? Because all they've got to do is get stage 1 up and going, and hopefully stage 2 is Brighton.
No, the bridge won't work without a railway line.
Ah, well, that's if that bridge ever gets built. I don't mind taking a little bit of flack on it, but they've been talking about it for longer than I've probably been on council. Lord Mayor, we should not interfere in what other councils do. Simple as that. We may have our positions, but this is a request of process that Brighton Council has to go through. And as far as I'm concerned, I am an elected representative of the municipality of Hobart. I care what happens in our municipality. I don't care what happens in other municipalities. If this affects the matter of a few more cars that might have to come down the highway, so be it. But at the end of the day, here we have, on the other hand, the last proposal we'll talk. I support increase in density, and we need more housing in this state, and especially southern Tasmania. And here is an opportunity for 11.27 hectares to be developed for housing, please. We can't say we want more housing and then say to another council, you can't have more housing. Everyone knows my position. As far as I'm concerned, let's build as much housing as we possibly can, where appropriate. Like I said in the previous. I will fully support Alderman Briscoe's proposal that we have no position. We should have no position here. But I do support the other components. If we have concerns with it, let's review it the same as the previous on the development up at in Sandy Bay, Enterprise Road, Lord Mayor. We don't like the planning scheme, and I've always said, if you don't like the planning scheme, seek scheme amendments. Right? But we can do it in our municipality. Let's not tell Brighton what to do, please. let's not get into that, because who knows, one day we might have to do something similar. And, you know, do we want this tit for tat? Come on. Let's have no position. So we have no position, but we support reviews and move forward.
Councillor Harvey, as might have been.
Sure, Lord Mayor, look, I've got to take issue with what Alderman Zuko has said, that we shouldn't have a position. No, respectfully, that we shouldn't have a position on this. I think we need to have a position on what happens with the urban environment in Hobart and around Hobart and into the other municipalities as well, because Hobart bears the consequences of urban sprawl. We have to deal with the traffic that flows down the several roads into Hobart that creates the bottleneck as we come into the city, that creates the congestion. And without adequate infrastructure in other places on the fringe, then it's just exacerbating the problems that we have in Hobart. So I do think it's in our interest to have a position on what happens in other suburbs. Now, the officers have pointed this out as well, that without infrastructure, without adequate infrastructure, you can't just continue to grow and push the urban boundary. So I do have problems with continuing to see urban sprawl, and we all know that. We've been talking about urban sprawl for 50, 60 years now. And when I did town planning back in the 80s, we were talking about urban sprawl and how we needed to put in infrastructure and how we needed to build nodes, so the primary, secondary sort of nodes, so people have the facilities and the services around them where they live, rather than need to drive to other locations. So I'm supportive of what the officers have recommended here, that we don't need to be supporting unplanned urban growth. And I would like to think that through the land, what's it called? The regional land use process, we can come up with the solutions for this. We can continue to determine where we want to see growth and where we don't want to see growth. So ad hoc extensions to the boundary, I'm not a supporter of, and I'll support the officer's recommendation here tonight.
Okay, Councillor Coates.
Thank you. Look, at the outset, I guess I'll support the foreshadowed motion by Alderman Briscoe. But just before we do, just a question through you to the appropriate officer. Do we sit on the Southern Technical Reference Group?
No. Southern Technical Reference Group of...
It says here, regional body representing local planning authorities in the Southern region, and this was in regards to the amendment for the Southern Tasmania Regional Land Use Strategy.
Yes, we do.
Cool, thank you. Look, I think some valid points have been raised. I mean, Councillor Harvey talks about the need to put housing near infrastructure. Luckily, in this case, we're dealing with them wanting to put more housing next to a school so that people can walk to school and be nearby. I think if you read through, and look, it's on page 73 and 74 of Brighton Council's agenda, when they discussed this motion, they actually talked about the fact there that this didn't randomly sort of just make it onto their agenda. They actually went through a process of consultation. One of the consultations was actually with that Southern Tasmania Reference Group, and they say in their own report that they asked if there's likely to be objections. And look, admittedly, apparently one council, I don't know whom, I presume it was us, came back and said they'd asked their planning authority. But other than that, they actually went to the reference group, and the reference group raised no objections, and they say that in their report. They also say that, and I know this was raised by the Deputy Mayor in regards to consulting with government and the planning officers, but they actually received letters of support from the Department of State Growth, letters of support from their planning policy unit, letters of support from planning consultant in regards to the landowner, letters of support from Mineral Resources Tasmania. So I think in this case, they actually did go through the proper process. They consulted the community, they received support, they essentially went through the reasons as to why, in Brighton Council's view, at least in their officer's view, this was an appropriate development for that site. I think it's quite obvious why you want to build houses next to a school. But look, I think that the point's been made already, which is what are we doing, trying to, in some ways, cast our will over what another council does. But, they've actually done the right thing here. They've gone to a community. They've gone to interested parties. They even came to us. and not us, not anyone else, formally raised any objections at the first instance. So then they've gone through a process, they've got all the information together, and they've come to this determination. And I just frankly think it's crazy for us to turn around and say, no, you shouldn't do that. Look, have a review of the urban growth boundary all we like, but in this case, they've got a clear reason as to why they went down this path. They've got a clear reason as to why they want housing in this area near the new school development. And all they're really doing is going through the steps and consulting us, in a way being a good neighbour, but I don't think it's our place to go back to them and saying, no, we don't like that. You know, they've made their decision for the right reasons, and upon reading their report, I think having done all the correct steps. So look, I'll be voting for the foreshadowed motion, and I'll urge others to as well.
Councillor Harvey.
Can I just qualify that? So this doesn't rest with us here tonight. This will be decided elsewhere.
Yes.
Planning Commission. Yeah. Councillor Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I suppose that does beg the question: what are we doing here, pressing on this issue? But look, I think just at the outset, and for every reason that Councillor Coates just laid out, I'll also be supporting Alderman Briscoe's. Is it an amendment or a foreshadowed motion?
Foreshadowed motion.
We need to be very careful telling other municipalities what they should or shouldn't or can or can't be doing in their municipalities, because I think if the shoe was on the other foot and we were asking for amendments in our municipality and other councils were trying to put spanners in the works, that we members of the council here would be screaming bloody murder. We've got a council in Brighton that is trying to do something to help address the housing supply problem that they have in their municipality. One that we have a long history in, an issue that we have a long storied history in, and we are trying to tell them that they shouldn't or can't be doing that. I absolutely agree with part 3 of the motion. I think that there's nothing wrong in calling for a review. I think a review is long past, and I think that it is absolutely appropriate for us to be requesting that the government fast track that. But at the same time, I don't think that is mutually exclusive to us either not having an opinion or supporting what it is the Brighton Council wants to do. As was said, they've done the homework on this. They've put the work into it, and what they're doing is effectively trying to get their area redeveloped to address the housing supply problem. I don't think that's something we should be standing in the way in. And if we need to seek review of the Act to ensure that what's happening into the future is not ad hoc, I don't think that needs to come at the expense of this, or at the expense of what it is that Brighton Council is trying to do. I think we need to be extremely careful. So look, for that reason, I won't be supporting what's on the agenda. I'll be supporting what Alderman Briscoe is putting forward. I'd be encouraging all of us to do the same. I think if we are looking at ways to avoid urban sprawl, I think that's something that rather than screaming at other councils and in the manner in which they're going about things, that's something we could be looking towards internally. So I'll leave it there, and I'll be encouraging everybody to support Alderman Briscoe's motion.
Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I wouldn't have thought that 0.27 of a hectare was expanding the urban sprawl too much. I think we need to be really careful here. There was 11 hectares of residentially zoned land. There was already general residential land of 11 hectares. A school came in, the state government on its own behalf decided to acquire property, and then a developer turned round and they want to move an 11.27 hectare site to general residential. So we're not talking about an urban sprawl, we're not talking about a major calamity fitting our already poor and extended highways through this town that we gave up a couple of years ago. We're talking about 0.27 of a hectare. We're not talking about 11 hectares, we're not talking about 11.27 hectares. For those who haven't already declared their position on this matter. You are going to vote tonight for us to get involved in a tit for tat for 0.27 of a hectare, not 11.27 hectares. Thank you.
Can the director just clarify that, because the recommendation says very clearly 11.27 hectares.
We lost 11, we're going to get 11.27 back.
Through you, Lord Mayor, that's the area that they want to increase the growth.
If I could clarify, Lord Mayor, there was 11 hectares in the urban growth boundary. There wasn't 11 hectares of general residential land which had been planned for that community. That was taken away, lost by the government coming in and saying this is a great place for a school. So the community which voted through that whole process, which is a tortuous process, to have 11 hectares of general residential land, lost 11 hectares, and now they want 11.27 for their trouble. Let's give them the 11.27.
I agree with your clarification.
Thank you.
Councillor Dutta?
Just a question through you, Lord Mayor. So this recommendation comes to us from the staff, and the decision we make here will not impact in the decision that will be taking place out there. Is that correct?
Ms. Noy?
Lord Mayor, the Minister has requested that that Brighton Council seek the views of all councils within the region on this proposal. And this is what we're here today to determine what our position is in relation to this matter. So that position will be provided to Brighton Council, and Brighton Council will ultimately forward that to the Minister, who will make a decision.
Another question while the Director's there on his feet. To your knowledge, has any other council objected?
Not that I'm aware of at this point in time.
So, Lord Mayor, so again, a clarification. What we are asked to do is to simply give our opinion and take a position on this. Is that true?
That's correct, yeah. Mr. Noy is
All
nodding.
right, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, if that is the case, let me just make a few points that the way I understand this. Firstly, that the facts for me is that there's a difference when we compare Hobart as a city in comparison to Brighton, Clarence, Glenorchy, Kingston, etc. It's not the same. So therefore, it is not a comparison of apples and apples. You know, they're quite different for me. They don't have the traffic congestion like we do here. This is where we have all this problem. So therefore, I think the facts for me are slightly different, and I have a different perspective in this. It is simply asking us to give a position, a particular view. It is not going to alter the decision that is going to be made out there. But it is okay for us to have a view, to take a position. And with that in mind, I am able to say for myself, reading the recommendation, that there is a need for strategic planning. And I think it's lacking here. And therefore, I think we need to emphasize that very strongly. Secondly, I think infrastructure is very important. State growth has been getting people like us in the thousands. But unfortunately, to get us in, you need to plan. And because there is no planning, we stuff the place up. There is no housing problem, there is traffic problem, and all kinds of problems. So all what I'm saying is that it's okay for the others to talk about this, but if I'm asked to give a position, a view, then I'm quite entitled to look at the facts and say, okay, if you're looking at infrastructure and this kind of planning, it is going to impact on us. We will suffer. And thirdly, the point I want to make here is this. This has come to us as a recommendation from staff, and I take their experience and qualified recommendation. I would support this. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I might say a few things. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, and I would actually like to ask the Director before I start, just about the process, this process of going out to neighbouring councils. Where did that come from? How long's it been in place, and how many times are we asked about extensions of urban growth boundary?
Yeah, look, I think it's been it's been some time, the approach that the Minister has taken. We commented a number of years ago in relation to a modest increase in Sorrel, for example. There have been other occasions. So, yeah.
So, I just want to rebut this idea that this is meddling and screaming at others, I think somebody said, which is just really about, which is just not what we're doing here. We are part of a region, we're part of the planning, the Southern Regional Strategy, and it is appropriate that we are consulted and that we have a view. And I liked Councillor Dudda's suggestion that we do need to take a point of principle, and this is the first of many of these. We are going to get more of these in the next little while. And to say we don't care what happens outside Hobart, well, it's all Hobart, it's all Greater Hobart. We're part of the Greater Hobart Act. We're developing a metro plan as well with our 4 urban councils. And my understanding is that every time there's something approved on the fringe, it makes some of the infill projects in the 4 urban councils less likely to occur. And there is still a lot of, we do all have infill targets under the Southern Land Use Strategy. My understanding is that Hobart's actually doing pretty well with our infill targets. But a couple of the other councils could do with some more infill, and I think the most famous of those obviously is the Northern Suburbs Rail Corridor, where there's a hell of a lot of potential for growth that just has not been realised, and that's the kind of infill that we should be really standing behind, speaking out for, and every time something is sort of approved, not just here but in other parts sprawling out, it does undermine our work to encourage infill and medium density. So I think we need to be very clear that there is choice here, there is points of principle, and we have to decide, where we stand on this issue. And I think as a inner city council, we do need to point out some of the challenges with urban sprawl. The other thing that is really important is money, and money talks. And every time that we do basically just say that, well, we don't mind if you just keep moving it into the urban, beyond the urban growth boundary, we are locking in a lot more money having to be spent by particularly state but also federal government in servicing infrastructure to those places. I was looking around on this topic today in a really good paper that I'll send around to everybody from the Australian Architectures Association, that basically found that inner city development costs about 3 times less to service than outer urban development. So they've got some really good numbers here, but for example, to build roads to all of these sprawling developments, it's about 5 times more money that is needed than maintaining roads for sort of more infill. But also there's the sewerage and water is close to double the cost. Telecommunications is a bit more. It's about double to service electricity on the fringe. Then there's education services is about 10 times more to spend on to service an outer fringe area than an inner urban area. So every time we say, we don't care what happens on the outside of Hobart, we're basically saying to our own residents, we don't care that there'll be no money for the inner city part of Hobart. But that's the reality. Our state and federal governments do not have endless amounts of money. And if they have to keep servicing these outer city suburbs with doubling of highways and expanding roads and other services, it does come at a cost to inner city support for inner city infrastructure. So there are implications for our residents. It is our business. And I think it's really appropriate. I appreciate what Alderman Thomas is saying. This one's a bit different, but I think we've got to take this seriously. There will be more of these. And I think if we don't speak out for this kind of these kind of important urban planning principles, then I'm not sure who will. So I really think it is important that we again follow the advice of our professional planners. They've given us the advice on this. I back them on that, and I support the recommendation. Deputy Lord Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just briefly sum up, Lord Mayor. Look, I think, again, we're talking about big picture issues, and we are part of the broader the area of Greater Hobart. Even though this is a different planning authority that is looking at it, the main thing is that we have guidance, and unfortunately that guidance is falling flat without the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy being updated. And I'll just quote from the report. It is noted that ultimately the proposed land area and likely housing yield is, in the context of the entire region, a relatively small proportion that is unlikely to have a significant impact of the overall attainment of regional land use objectives. However, continual cumulative amendments of this size is likely to impact on those objectives. So this is one of many that are in the pipeline. We shouldn't beat around the bush about that. We should be providing that advice and suggestions rather than thinking that it's nothing to do with us. Let's just wash our hands of it. Well, we're in this together. I think we need to be considering those things that the Lord Mayor has said about good economic management, let alone good planning sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Alderman Briscoe, you got a
5
Yes,
votes or Lord Mayor, so it's lost.
foreshadowed coming up.
Lord Mayor, the foreshadowed. So, point one, the council does not have an opinion one way or another on the proposal for an amendment to the STRLUS to extend the urban growth boundary to include 11.27 hectares of land at, is it 69 Brighton Road? Number two, straight off the previous motion that failed, and number three, straight off the previous motion. So in supporting of that...
seconded by Alderman Zuko, sorry.
And it probably reflects the opinion of the council because we're divided, therefore we have no opinion about the rezoning or the urban growth boundary. And number two and three, I think, are sensible things which fit in with what I think about the bigger picture as well, like you try to talk about. I still have great doubts that we should be interfering at such a micro level at small decisions by our neighbouring councils. They didn't interfere when we decided to get our urban growth boundary extended, and I don't think we should either. We shouldn't be involved in micro-managing another council's legitimate role. They have elected members there who have agreed to this, and as Councillor Coates said very well, they've gone through a process. We should accept that their process is genuine and it's been thorough, and we shouldn't have an opinion. But if the council does have worries about the impacts, then number two and number three cover it. And again, why didn't we jump up and down 5 years ago when the first review was due? Why didn't we jump up again when the second review was due? And I think that shows a lack of our looking at these issues in a strategic sense. So I think we should keep the pressure on the government to do number three. We missed the mark 5 years ago. Where was that grouping of urban councils then? Where have they been after 10 years? So I still think, as I said, we shouldn't be micromanaging someone else's council business, elected council business.
Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I wonder if we could have, I'd like to move a minor amendment to part 3, that council seek an immediate meeting with the Premier and new Minister for Planning to highlight the need to update the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy.
I'm quite happy to include that in with the permission of my seconder.
I'm not going to include it.
You're not going to include it, right.
Perhaps
Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, there's no evidence to base this, but we've got to be careful before we immediately consider.
Sorry, Alderman Thomas. Sorry, I just realised I might have done something wrong with the procedure.
So I've put an amendment, so I need a seconder.
Sure. Okay. So because it wasn't accepted in, we will have to vote on it. Sorry. So we might do that now.
We need a seconder.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor Harvey. So that was a request to include something about an urgent meeting. So I'll put that, all those in favour.
Before we put that, Lord Mayor, can I just ask through you to the Director, when is there a standard review coming up? I mean, it's a cyclical issue.
No.
Yes, Lord Mayor, it's my understanding that they are programming it for next year. Is the time frame?
It's programmed.
Okay, so I'll put the amendment by Deputy Lord Mayor about a meeting being sought. All those in favour...
Who's the seconder?
Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. No. A show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Okay, that's lost. Yep. All right. So moving on the amendment, Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, I don't have the evidence to support this conclusion, but I think we've got to be very careful before we imagine, Lord Mayor, that this residential land, this 0.27 hectare combined extension, not 11.27 hectares, will actually mean this is a transport hub. Brighton has got a quite separate set of industries. It's a very, very strong transport hub. It's where the railhead stops. The problem in this area is rented houses and properties for workers in Brighton. It isn't, as I think, I don't know whether, I hope I haven't misrepresented, I don't misrepresent him, but when Councillor Dutta was indicating our road systems and things happening in Hobart, I actually think we are not the nucleus of the region. People don't just come to Hobart if they live in Brighton. In actual fact, there is a very strong and getting better economy out there all the time with whether it's their rates policy or not, I'm not sure. But the reality is there is a huge industrial sector out there now, and land and housing is necessary right now to support the what's left of our Tasmanian economy.
Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, just a question for clarification. And the question is, did we invade their privacy, as it were, and said we want to say something and give our opinion or position on this, or were we invited to?
Mr. Noy.
As I previously indicated, Lord Mayor, we were invited to form an opinion in relation to this matter.
Clarification.
Mr.
On the same question.
Alderman Briscoe.
So they asked us for our support, not our opinion.
Endorsement, that's correct.
Right. So they've asked for our endorsement.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
I was going to say, Lord Mayor, there's a difference between being invited to thing or being asked to endorse. We are not going to endorse, nor not endorse as far as I'm concerned. Lord Mayor, I just have a question through you to maybe the last night of our acting General Manager's position tonight in the chair. Through you, Lord Mayor, to the acting General Manager. If there's a 5-5 vote, again, by any chance, does that mean that we have made no decision?
Lord Mayor, through you, yes, a 5-5 vote is counted as lost and therefore no decision.
So that would mean, Lord Mayor, that the very important components of part 2 and 3 would also go by the wayside, Lord Mayor. So maybe I urge one of my fellow elected members to give consideration to changing their minds.
Thank you for that.
That was clear to me.
Is it possible to separate that? Is it possible to separate that so we vote?
I think.
So we vote on 1, 2, and 3 separately.
I think we can just decide to do that. I don't think we have to vote on doing that. So I'm happy to put all those items separately. Yeah. Discussion?
Lord Mayor, I'd be happy to vote on these separately because I won't support the first one because I think it's completely negligent for a council to just let things roll on in their neighbouring councils without any form of contribution to what's happening. Good town planning doesn't, well, we haven't had a lot of good town planning in the broader area of Hobart. Look at Kingston, for example. You've got multiple shopping centres. It's been a disaster for years because there's been no bigger vision of how Kingston should have been planned. The last thing we want is the Brighton area to be planned in an ad hoc kind of way. So I really do think it makes sense for us to have a view on how things occur in Brighton because it affects what happens in Hobart. And that's what the officers have been trying to emphasise here in the report with their recommendation that we don't support this particular rezoning or expansion of the urban growth boundary. So I really think we've got to be careful here that we just don't let things run away from us all the time. We've got to have input into what happens in broader Hobart if we want to resolve the traffic issues that we have, if we want to resolve the transport issues that we have as well. And I understand that building houses next to a school is not a bad thing, but it's outside the urban growth boundary. Is it required? Can the school population be met from within the urban growth boundary? And you made some really excellent points before in your contribution, which I think we should all keep in mind. It costs a lot of money to keep growing the city out versus infill in the appropriate locations, which is what Alderman Zuko has been arguing for a long time, and I think we all agree. Urban infill in the right locations is far better than continuing to expand the urban growth boundary in an ad hoc way. It's not good planning, and we need to come back to the basics here and just work with what we've got and make sure that we get a good outcome for Hobart as well as the region.
Councillor Coates.
Look, it's been a good discussion, and speaking to the new motion we have before us, look, I think Councillor Harvey raised some really good points there, some very good points when he talks about the fact that we shouldn't be done in an ad hoc manner, there should be a process, there should be consultation, and that ultimately, we need to support the development of appropriate housing where it's needed, near jobs, near infrastructure, near transport, near schools. The good thing is I've literally got in front of me Brighton's report, and they did do the consultation. Not only that, they consulted with us. They went to the Southern Technical Reference Group, comprised of all the Southern councils. They literally did the groundwork and came to us in the first instance, plus others, seeking preliminary views. Now, it does say now, obviously, that we have the powers and elected representatives of this city to essentially overrule that reference group, but they actually did do the work. And their formal recommendation back to their elected members was that no concerns were raised. They've also consulted with other bodies, and look, I think it's worthwhile reading the conclusion of their report. The extension of the urban growth boundary at 69 Brighton Road is urgently required to meet the future need of Greater Hobart and is a logical extension to the Brighton Township and adjoins the new high school site. It's in good proximity to the Brighton Activity Centre, Brighton Industrial Estate, and provides excellent access to social services and employment opportunities. This site is already being considered in the master planning process for the Southern Brighton Development Precinct to ensure it's part of an attractive, well-planned neighbourhood which integrates with a new Brighton High School. So look, Brighton Council, as far as I can see from all the evidence, are actually doing the work. They're doing the planning appropriately. They're not just doing it in an ad hoc manner. And what they've been dealt with is a situation where the government's come along and taken 11 hectares off them. And they've said, we've got employment opportunities, social services, and now a new school. And yes, they're asking for an extra 0.27 of a hectare, but all they're saying is, we were already planning this, they've done the work, they've done a consultation, they've gone out to interested parties, and now at a final step they're just saying, look, formally, on the record, we'd like the other council's views, and we've heard from the director, admittedly, his knowledge, there may be others, but no one is actually objecting. We would be the odd one out. And look, I think the Brighton Council's report speaks for itself, and again, I'll urge us all to vote for the foreshadowed motion. We don't even have to offer a positive endorsement, which is what they're seeking, but we really shouldn't be giving the signal that in any way, shape or form the work they've done is wrong or inaccurate or inappropriate. I think they've done the right thing and we should be ultimately backing them on it. Thanks.
Okay, did you want to sum up at all, Alderman Briscoe?
No, thanks.
So I'll put item 1, which isn't in front of you, but it's basically that we offer no opinion on the specific proposal?
One way or another. Yeah.
One way or the other, yeah. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Two.
No. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas and Alderman Briscoe.
Against?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
That one's lost. Okay, now we have item 2. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against say no.
Aye.
The item 2.
What was part 2 again?
Can I hear item 2 again, please?
Part 2 is,
a bit surprised.
what's written. But that was part of your motion, Alderman Briscoe?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Okay, all those in, so I'll just start again. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour?
Oh, in favour.
Councillor Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against? And item 3, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously.
Can I clarify? We have no opinion because we voted to have no opinion, basically.
Correct.
No decision. So, in fact, the outcome is no opinion.
There's no decision.
Could I just have that clarified through you, Lord Mayor, to the acting General Manager, acting in the role? Just,
Anyway, in relation to item 1, there is no decision.
We failed to have an opinion rather than...
Okay, so we're moving on now to the City Infrastructure Committee. And I'll invite Alderman Harvey to, Councillor Harvey to open this item.
Move the item, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
I'll read the recommendation, Lord Mayor. Item 1, subject to successful grant funding, the proposal for the Argyle Street, Campbell Street, Liverpool Street and Bathurst Street trial bicycle facilities, as generally described in attachment E to item 6.2 of the Open City Infrastructure Agenda of 20th of April, be installed. Should planning approval be required due to the archaeology overlay, the General Manager be authorised to lodge an application, such an application. Part 3, appropriate public information, resources to explain the function and reasoning of the new facilities be created and form part of the trial. Part 4, City of Hobart develops the arrangements to support and undertake clearway towing and vehicle removal options and recoup costs and levy appropriate fines. And Part 5, a review of parking charges, operating hours and unmetered spaces in the area surrounding the project be undertaken and appropriate changes be implemented to offset any revenue impacts. So, Lord Mayor, Council first endorsed the concept design for bicycle facilities on Argyle Street, Campbell Street, Liverpool Street, Bathurst Street back in December 2019. During 2020, the City undertook the key stakeholder engagement and in collaboration with officers of the Department of State Growth, Transport Division, further work's been undertaken to refine the traffic modelling and concept design. The incorporation of feedback into the concept design has seen modifications to curb bulbing and other civil works to improve junction layout, safety and efficiency. The traffic studies and observations undertaken indicate there's a road network capacity to accommodate the concept designs using pre-COVID traffic volumes for analysis. So I think this will be an excellent trial, Lord Mayor, and I'm hopeful that we can unanimously support this around the table tonight. It is subject to funding becoming available, but I think we all know, as Alderman Thomas said earlier, we want to create a city with people in mind, and we need to improve mobility in the city. And I've been looking at the number of scooters over the last few days as well, and I've got to say that I'm quite surprised by the number of people riding electric scooters around Hobart. And to have an increasing rollout of adequate facilities, like what's proposed tonight, I think is really important to facilitate that. And I'm confident that over time, and as we start to realise that this is the way and the direction that all cities are going, we'll be supporting more projects like this. But I think this is a very good project, and I hope the trial gets up tonight.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yes, I hope the trial gets up tonight as well, because I support infrastructure such as this. But the keenness, it is a trial, and when we find, like City of Geelong has removed at a cost of $5 million a bicycle pathway, City of Sydney apparently are considering removing a bike path because it's found to be ineffective. We've got to be very careful. Now, I support separated bicycle routes around central Hobart. Just put that on record. But we shouldn't, as it was pointed out in the previous item, we've got to do it with proper assessment, evaluation and cost benefit. Now, I'm hoping that it is a successful trial and the volumes are not 20 a day, more like 100 or 150 and growing or something like that, and we get more traffic from the Domain via the bridge, the Rose Garden Bridge. But at a point in time, we've got to say, are they working? Is it going to, in the long run, be good for the city if we have a bike path that doesn't work? I'm hoping it works. I wish it works, and I'm anticipating that it'll will work. But we've just got to keep an eye out, without saying that we're anti-city or anti-people or anti-pedestrians. We have, in this period of time, we've got to be really careful with our funds. Now, one thing I might have missed it, but how much are we seeking for a grant fund?
Mr. Noy.
Yes, Lord Mayor, now we've done some cost estimates and we're seeking 1.7 million to do it, which would, based on a P90 cost estimate, we're reasonably 90% sure that it will be able to be constructed for that value. And preliminary feedback from the state government is very supportive of the likelihood of receiving such funding.
Okay, and just a final question before I sit down, Lord Mayor, probably to the same person, through you. If the trial we evaluate as successful, and perhaps I should ask you, what are the criteria for success?
Yeah, well, look, I think we would hope to see greater use of a safe facility that transits through the CBD, so certainly increase in numbers over time.
So we have got any baseline figures?
Yes, we do have baseline figures.
Okay, and the question is, at the end of the trial, and it's evaluated and the council decides it has worked or is working, what extra things would have to be done? With the 1.9 million, is that a completed project or is that a trial project?
1.7 million, Lord Mayor, that's a completed project, so we wouldn't have to do anything further at that point.
Thank you.
Zuko.
Lord Mayor, I'm just letting everybody know I'm not supporting this. I don't think I supported the original point that was put forward here. Was it 2019, did you say, Mr. 2019?
Correct, December.
Yes, I remember I didn't support it. Lord Mayor, as Alderman Briscoe pointed out, there is cities all over this country that are re-evaluating their bicycle lanes and all that, and I just can just see my close friend up at Not Lofty, who's 75 years of age, scooting down the hill. It'd just something that we should be looking forward to. Lord Mayor, my concerns are cost. We just seem to not give consideration to some things because we think it's going to be fantastic for the city and all that. But as we know, there are cities that are taking these bikeways away because even those cities that have up to 10% of the population using them, it's just not cost effective. When you look at the report from 1.2, Lord Mayor, it's even you know, I know we've got some estimates there, but even the report says that planning these estimates it can be ranged by generating several estimates. So these are only estimates; they're not actual. Yes, they're getting on to the 90% to the project cost sufficient contingency to 90% is likelihood that the cost would not be exceeded, but doesn't say that it will not be exceeded. Lord Mayor, this council has some serious issues with its finances, and I made it very, very clear at the last election, and I'll be making it very, very clear in respect of the way we spend our money. To my point of view, yes, if the state government or the federal government or some rich person wants to give us $2 million towards the project, so be it, as long as it doesn't cost us one cent, because I don't want to spend another red cent on this. So I believe the report the recommendation should change. And the recommendation should be that the first step we should take is seek funding. Once we've sought funding, we take the next step. The report come back to council. Once we've achieved the funding for the proposal, for council to give consideration to what we do next. I'm not going to support something subject to funding, because I can just imagine that we get $1.7 million, but at the end of the day it might cost us 1.9, then the council coffers have to put in. I would like it fully costed, and it needs to be fully costed before any of us can really make serious considerations to supporting this. This report, as it reads, is not fully costed this project. These are estimates, and I'm sorry, estimates I know one thing about estimates, they can actually blow right out the door. So I am not supporting this. I will support that we give delegated authority to the General Manager to seek funding for this project, full stop. And if funds are positive, that a report come back to council. That's what I will support. I'm foreshadowing that.
Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, it's a question, first of all. It's to whoever you think can answer it. When we're looking for $2 million to potentially construct a car park up for the facilities up at Mount Wellington, we haven't gone out and said we're going to trial. We're going to take a couple of tractors in there and mark out a quadrant for the car parking, let people think what it's going to be like. How do we trial something we haven't built? I mean, we're in an electronic age where, as people have said, cities around the world have got bike paths, and I am in favour of bike paths. I don't know about your electric scooter, Lord Mayor, but the bike paths, the bikes are good. But how do we trial something, put the community into a full sense that this is a new bike lane, because we're trialling something with our own money, I'm assuming. If we're good at grant application, I'm sure our new General Manager will be able to help us with grant applications much better than we've done in the past, or more than we've done in the past. But if we don't need to trial something to convince someone to give us money to do something. We've got statistics, we've got traffic flows, we've got people flows, we've got property information. I don't understand why we let the community think through a trial that we've actually got something in place when we've got no intention of building permanent facilities unless somebody gives us what could be up to $2 million. I don't mind virtual modelling. I don't mind doing the work to estimate and to look at how that bike path would interact with other bikeway and bikeway systems we have in the city. But I don't understand what a trial would be and what a trial would mean. I have gone back to the infrastructure report for that.
Point of clarification, I think, could I just ask Mr Noy to clarify that we are actually seeking money for the trial?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mr Noy, can you clarify that?
Just a couple of responses there. I refer you to attachment B, GHD traffic modelling and analysis report. We have done traffic modelling in relation to this to demonstrate that it does work. That has been reviewed by State Growth. They are supportive of this trial. In relation to Alderman Zuko's issue about estimations, we have gone out to an external independent engineering firm to provide us with a detailed costing estimate, which would stand up before any funding agency. And as I indicated to you earlier, we have had very positive responses during an election that we will be successful in relation to funding submission that we've made to date. So I'm reasonably confident that funding will be coming forward that will fund this 100% without any additional funding from council being necessary.
Lord, may I have a question through you to the Acting General Manager, considering that our Director has guaranteed that the funding wouldn't be any more than $1.75, $205,000, and he's guaranteed that. Surely I think that should be added to the motion to be guaranteed. What do you think, the General Manager? Can provide your advice, please?
Mr Short?
Take it.
Mr Short.
Well, Lord Mayor, the cost estimates are provided in the documentation that went to committee, so it's implicit that it is part of the council's decision tonight.
Well, someone needs to move an amendment that those cost estimates are.
Alderman Briscoe.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. A question, and I just have to do the background. The Rose Garden Bridge was estimated at a certain price, yet with the build cost was about $3 million or extra. The Bridge of Remembrance was estimated, and we got a grant, and it was about $5 million extra. Now, I know those two figures intimately because that was money set aside for the Battery Point Walkway, and I agreed at the time that was going to be the shortfall. So, for example, if our estimate, the question is, if our estimate is 1.7, whatever it is, million, and we get the grant for 1.7 million, and it turns out to be a $2.5 million project, will it go ahead?
Who'd like to respond to that question? Mr Noy?
Back to us, wouldn't it?
Through you, Lord Mayor, look, I think we've all learned from those capital works projects, and we've gone to external providers in relation to this cost estimate, and a P90 is designed to accommodate significant variation. So a P90 estimate is normally what you would expect major infrastructure providers to be guided by, and as I said, we've learned from those early examples that you pointed out, and we've been very cautious in relation to our estimating in this case.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Look, I really welcome this report. Anybody'd think that we don't want any sort of bike paths constructed in our city, but and I hope the new CEO doesn't get that message, because the work that has been done to get to this point has been back and forth to the Active Transport Committee. There has been significant amounts of input from various stakeholders and people who own properties along these routes. So I'm confident that this is going to be a great improvement to our fairly limited bike infrastructure. Unfortunately, we don't have very good connections between our bike infrastructure, and this is a really important link to the new Rose Garden Bridge, to the new various multi-dwelling apartments that we have up in North Hobart. So, and to our major employer, the Royal Hobart Hospital, and various satellites around that area. So, bring it on. You know, I'm exasperated by the conversation that occurs around this table sometimes, I must say. there has been such a dragging of heels to get to a point where we can even have a trial of bike lanes, 2 bike lanes up major routes, to provide safety, to give people that opportunity to take alternative transport. It's not that hard. I commend the motion.
Okay, Councillor Coates, did you want to speak?
Yeah, if I could. Look, I used a lot of the bike paths when I was training for my poly pedal ride, and they are quite good. And look, in and of itself, I think doing a trial and getting funding is a good thing. But I just think this might be the wrong motion at the wrong time. And my fears go to, really it's laid out in report 7.2, impact on future years' financial results. I know we're talking about the capital works and the potential for overruns there, but I mean, it does outline in this report that essentially we're going to be authorising up to $160,000 a year in foregone revenue. Now, I know that potentially it'll be offset by increased utilisation elsewhere, and it will be offset by potentially looking at new parking meters, but I'm just cognisant that we've got a new general manager that started now, and one of the first things will be inevitably a deep dive into spending and revenue and essentially dealing with the tricky decisions we're going to have to make. But we're here discussing something tonight that actually has an impact on recurring revenue for the city. And look, I appreciate we're going to get a grant from the government, and arguably it's a trial, so we can always reverse it, but I just think we sort of need to nut out that aspect of it a little bit more before we make a decision. And when I go through the risks of this and I see that it's highlighted here, they're going to go, the foregone revenue for the Campbell and Argyle Street components is $54,600, another $5,000 on Bathurst, another $100,000 for removing the parking spaces. Yet again, we seem to be sort of locking ourselves into this reduction of revenue, and I can't see stuff in the report about where we'd get that back. Are we looking at increasing parking options elsewhere to offset that? I'm not so sure. So look, I'm not necessarily against the idea, but I think this might potentially be slightly too early. Look, I might foreshadow that we potentially might look to delay this, if you like, because I think there's a bit of work that needs to go on around it, albeit if we can receive $1.7 million, and if that's going to be the capital work cost, and we can do it as a trial, it's probably not a bad thing, in the clear understanding, but I think there does need to be some discussion about the actual ongoing costs for the city, and it spells out the risks of that in this report, and I'm not sure that I'm comfortable right now signing away $160,000 revenue recurring every year.
Just have a question.
Okay, I think it was Alderman Zuko first.
Through you, Lord Mayor, to the appropriate officer, considering that this proposal is for alternative transport, and we're considering a trial for this alternative transport, has the council ever considered a trial on building a car park for people that drive cars?
Do you want to answer that, Mr. Short?
Lord Mayor, not that I can recall. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Lord Mayor, you had a question?
Yes. Through you to the acting General Manager and to whoever it might be relevant to, perhaps Mr. Doyle, the budget process and looking forward, obviously we have to make some savings. Has this been considered in that overall process?
Lord Mayor, through you, and Mr. Doyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is to be funded by grant funding, so we haven't necessarily included it in the capital works program as an expenditure item for this council, based on the fact that we are expecting to receive a full grant for the project. Mr. Doyle, do you have anything to add to that?
As a supplementary question on a similar topic, the budget will have the foregone monies from the parking meters that are being removed and fines.
So that the budget, I think that's for...
Have the less expenditure, less revenue.
Through you, Lord Mayor, we've we've covered through pending the fees and charges being adopted by council in 2 weeks. We've modelled that for this next financial year.
Okay, Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, you know what they say about trials, and I'll recycle one of my favourite phrases that I use in here. There's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary government measure. We love our trials, and we put them in and we say, don't worry, it's only a trial, but they tend to be slightly more long-lived than just a temporary trial. And look, I can sympathise with the Deputy Lord Mayor's exasperation at the dragging of heels, but that tends to be on other issues such as planning and parking, as Alderman Zuko raised. But that aside, look, I've got a few concerns with what's being proposed. The budgetary impact was one of them. That's been done to death, so I'm not going to get redundant there. But the council in 2019 voted for what was put forward on Campbell Street near the hospital, and there was a lot of advice. There was a lot of arguing about it, and there was a lot of advice that was given that this would have minimal traffic impacts. I drive down that road almost every single morning, and that part of the road where it converts from 3 lanes to 2 lanes flows perfectly well until more than 2 cars or 1 bus or slightly larger vehicle decides that they want to turn right, and it turns into a one lane road, and the whole block turns into gridlock. And that's not even in peak hour. That's way before the 8 a.m. rush. That's Campbell Street and Argyle Street are 2 of the main arterial roads that lead in and out of the north of the city. And for us to look at what we're doing and to say that it's not going to have any impact on mobility, which mode of transport people are choosing to use most often, to reduce the capacity of that on a main arterial road, not even withstanding the significant cost to council that may or may not be fully covered or may not blow out like so many other projects do. This is something I've got pretty significant concerns about. I think the impact on those 2 roads will only make it harder for the majority of people that commute in and out of the city. So I don't think it's a case of heel dragging. I think it's a case of not wanting something that's going to end up with poor outcomes for the majority of people that commute in and out of the city. So I won't be supporting this in any regard, regardless of whether or not we get the funding for it.
Further discussion. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Sorry, just one more question through you to Mr Noy. Do we need, or to the Acting General Manager, do we need a proposal before we can have funding to be successful in funding?
Does it being shovel-ready help its success is the question, I guess.
Lord Mayor, look, we've already made a submission in relation to this, and we put forward a proposal currently before council, clearly on the basis of that earlier decision by council. So clearly you do need a proposal to achieve any successful funding submission, I would have thought.
And a supplementary question. Could you estimate roughly how many hours of staff time has gone into this proposal to date?
Lord Mayor, it would be very difficult for me to nominate a figure, but it has been a considerable amount of officer time, a considerable amount of consultants' time to get to this point.
Thank you.
Where we've got a position where we think Department of State Growth are happy to fund this piece of infrastructure.
Excellent, thank you.
Just a clarification of meanings of words, Lord Mayor. If we don't get the funding, which I'm reassured a little bit that from our director that we've got it or we'll have it. We haven't got it in writing, I don't imagine, yet, but subject to grant funding proposal, if we don't get the funding, are we approving the project?
Mr Noy.
Through you, Lord Mayor, this is recommendation is to go ahead is subject to obtaining complete funding for the project from an external entity.
Right, thank you.
Okay, further,
Lord
Alderman
Mayor.
Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I'm concerned about the ratepayers' money here, like I always do. Well, maybe what we need is someone, on what Mr Noy just said, complete funding. Yes, I am. I'm just getting to maybe on what Mr Noy said. Do you think it would be appropriate, through you to the Acting General Manager, that the word complete funding be added, seeing that the Director has made that point?
Mr. Shaw, would you like to answer that question?
If that's the will of the council, there's nothing wrong with adding that in. If that gives council greater comfort, certainly the advice to you tonight is that the funding application that has been submitted is for full funding, and that is the intent of officers. But if that would give council greater comfort, then there is no reason why that would be added into the recommendation.
Point of clarification, Lord Mayor, because the words full funding is not here. Maybe the mover and the seconder may give consideration to adding the word full funding.
It'll come from the committee. It's got to be an amendment.
Oh, right, it's got to be an amendment. Okay.
Right. I'd like to say a few words. Oh, sorry, someone else. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been listening to the various points that have been made, and I just want to make 2 points in this discussion. Firstly, this has come to us today because it has come through a process. There has been some time that we have spent together, and council in the past has approved it, and that's why we've got this. That's first point. Point number 2, it is very clear for me, the point number 1 states very clearly that it is subject to successful grant funding. Now, I don't know if there can be any other interpretation given to that. It is only going to go ahead subject to this. So I have difficulty understanding the other interpretation because it is very clear for me. So therefore, because of that, it's a trial. The granting, the answers given to us by the Director, for me is quite convincing, and therefore I will support it. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Just a quick question. Can I just get it clarified? So at this stage, we are predicting, then the trial goes ahead and it's made permanent, that about $160,000 of revenue from the parking meters will be foregone into the future because they'll be taken off, those units will be taken off. Yes?
That's correct, but then Mr Carr said he'd factored that in with other changes to parking.
Increase in rates.
So there's not...
So there's no loss of financial, no financial loss. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sherlock.
The Deputy Lord Mayor was saying just about sometimes being frustrated about what goes on in this council, some of which could have been resolved if the report had been read accordingly. Number 2, without trying to preach about what words mean in English, subject to implies that anything that follows after the word subject to is subject to those words after it. To have to add those, I mean, just again, I'm shocked and stunned that we have to sit here and have these kinds of discussions about something that has been outlined in the report. We've been sitting here wasting so much time. We have followed a process already. The wording is there as to what it actually means. If the funding is successful, it will follow.
Before we stop there.
That was noted.
Discussion?
That was noted for another time.
Further discussion? No? Okay, I'm going to say a few words. Look, I do share some frustration about the discussion tonight because I think if people are really concerned and want to do a deep dive into these projects, that's what we have the committee system for. You know, we were taken through a lot of things that have been raised tonight about impacts on revenue, about the GHD's modelling of traffic. It's all been gone through at the committee stage, and you know, maybe we need to actually have kind of in-depth briefings before these major infrastructure decisions so that every elected member gets to hear that same information, because it's all there. And we do have to think about, you know, our role in governance, and we did make a decision to go out to quite deep consultation, which has taken a lot of staff time. There's been a lot of planning, a lot of expenditure's been spent, and we gave the okay to do that because we were generally comfortable with the concept, and we're coming back now. We've got a government offering us money, and we know that having a project that's shovel-ready makes it even more attractive for a state or federal government to do it. Our decision tonight will make this shovel-ready. Why on earth would we just say, no, we don't want to take your money? We don't want to be like every other sort of capital city and do separated cycleways. I've got to say the cities that I'm talking to, including Brisbane, I was talking to the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, which is taking out a lot of their inner city parking, on-street parking, and putting in these pop-up cycleways, not just for cyclists, but also for these scooters and things, and just because to ensure that there's a lot of room for pedestrians to move and enjoy the city. The New South Wales government is spending $1.1 billion on walking and cycling. They're giving away money to Sydney City Council like there's no tomorrow. The Victorian government is funding 100 kilometres of cycling lanes in inner Melbourne. I mean, this is where modern cities are going. We've done the work. We don't have people jumping up and down because the staff have put a lot of thought into the consultation process. They've also greased the wheels with the state government, who are willing to actually hand us over money. Why on earth wouldn't we just make this next step to say it's shovel ready? It still requires that final approval from the state government, but I think it would be good, it is good governance for us to take the next step with this today. It's been a long time in the making, a lot of staff's gone into it, and I think it'd be good to see strong support for this around the table. I think,
Yeah.
oh no.
Are we done? Yep. Mm-hmm.
The amendment was...
I think there was a view for amendment that would say for full funding.
No one took it up.
Okay. So Alderman, Councillor Harvey, did you want to sum up?
Thank you, Acting General
Just
Manager.
briefly, Lord Mayor, what an incredibly hard slog it is to get any sort of bike infrastructure set up in Hobart. No, it is. Every time we have an item on the agenda to do with bike infrastructure or mobility issues, it's really quite a challenging conversation. You know, we can go back to the Sandy Bay Road bike lane as well a number of years ago, which was really well contested. You know,
just let Councillor Harvey, please.
But it's incredibly frustrating for some of us and for the bike community, and I'm sure for the officers that put together these really extensive reports, and spend a lot of time and energy in community engagement and going above and beyond what is normally required for an engagement process. If it was to do with, I don't know, many other things, but they wouldn't have to do so much work. But we are really thorough when it comes to mobility issues in Hobart, and this engagement process has been going on for a while, and we've done that with most other infrastructure to do with mobility issues as well. So I'm hopeful tonight that we can get this trial up and going. It's being paid for, hopefully, by the state government. It's not going to cost us any money. When it comes to the issue of lost revenue, as Part 5 says, a review of parking charges, operating hours and unmetered spaces in the area surrounding the project be undertaken and appropriate changes be implemented to offset any revenue impacts. So that's not putting the rates up so we can pay for a bike path. That's working more smart or smarter with the infrastructure we have when it comes to parking. So I have total confidence in Mr Carr's division to come up with a way of offsetting any losses from on-street parking. That's his job. That's what he does. That's what he does really well. And I'm very confident in him and his division to adequately compensate for any loss on the streets by providing better services elsewhere. So I'm hopeful tonight that this does get up because it's a really important moment in mobility in Hobart. Now we sit around at the, Alderman Bennett and I are on the what's the committee called? The
Active Transport Committee.
Active Transport Committee. And we go through these plans a bit more thoroughly than I guess everyone else has the opportunity to do. And we listen to the presentations from the officers and stuff. And I'm really confident in their skills to deliver these things for us. I'm confident in the process that we've had to date, and I'm hopeful of a good outcome here tonight.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis.
Look, moving. It's
Thank you.
7. I'm thinking we should have a quick toilet break of no more than 5 minutes. minutes, please. Thank you.
The motion.
Oh, sorry, we need a motion to adjourn. Moved by
I
Deputy.
move.
Moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Deputy
Aye.
Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried. Others?
Glenn, can you go on? Thank you.
Get going again. I will invite Councillor Sherlock to introduce item 12.
Yeah, right. Thank
Councillor
you.
Sherlock.
Yep, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Item number 12, the Hobart A City for All Community Inclusion and Equity Framework.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey.
Was adopted at our committee meeting, and working community inclusion and social equity has been guided by the social inclusion strategy over the past decade. As this strategy has now expired, engagement has been undertaken to develop a new strategic framework to guide the council's work into the future. Extensive community sector and stakeholder engagement was undertaken during 2020, and public engagement was undertaken in March-April 2021. Many of the suggestions for changes were minor in nature and have been able to be incorporated into the document. Hobart, A City for All, supports the city to communicate the role of local government in community inclusion and equity, and I do hope that everybody had the chance to read the report and also this particular framework as well. I commend the team that has actually put this together. Thank you very much, and I'll put the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13, Councillor Sherlock.
Sorry.
Yep, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm sure everybody's also read this wonderful report as well. It's absolutely outstanding, and again, I do thank our staff for putting this together. On our committee's agenda on the 29th of April, it went out for board community engagement, and the recommendations are already there. But just as a background, council officers have been engaging with community partners to draft a suite of community commitments for a broader community engagement process to be undertaken. The suite of commitments is designed to cascade down from the community vision, strategic plan and community inclusion and equity framework, and will directly support these guiding documents with inclusion and equity deliverables. 5 of these are revisions of previous commitments or strategies. The LGBTQI and plus commitment is a new document developed as a result of feedback received during the engagement for the Hobart A City for All framework. It is noted that there is no longer a specific document relating to the children and families program area. The youth commitment has been expanded to capture some of the broader initiatives. The format allows for accessible and succinct documents with the capacity for regular review to ensure they are contemporary and responsive to emerging issues and trends. A further report would be presented to the Council in June, seeking final adoption of the community commitments.
Councillor Sherlock, that's been seconded by Alderman Thomas. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Item 14 is to receive and note elected member professional development project of Alderman Thomas's, moved by Alderman Briscoe, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Alderman Thomas, did you want to speak to this or not?
Look, I don't think so,
No.
Lord Mayor. It's
Brochure out, and I thought you might want to say something.
yeah. Look, it's people won't necessarily be able to see this, but it's all about the idea that we have got this wealth of knowledge out in the community, and we don't necessarily pick it up. But also that in the conference organisers, I've just noted that the head of the community's involvement was a public servant responsible in the 1980s for tearing down pictures in government buildings of Queen Elizabeth, so I don't know whether or not they missed this one. But the reality is that the comment being that after COVID, that government has offered us small targets, and that conferences like this are designed to allow the community's voice to come through and say, you're not going far enough, you're being too quiet, you're being too conservative, you're being too cautious. We need greater actions to take place. And I guess to a large degree, hopefully I'll be able to bring back the mechanism by which that happens, or some of the results that have happened through adopting that. But the speakers are absolutely fantastic. And if it's on every year, and unlike the $2,000, $3,000 conferences, this is, I think it's $340 or something for a 2-day conference. So it really does start to make value. Good, thank you.
All right, so that's been moved and seconded. So all those in receive and note. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Item 16 is the special report from the Acting General Manager.
I just move that. I'll move that.
Moved by Alderman Barakis, seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, my views and reflections on the details of the determination have already been put out there and made pretty clear in the public space and via public channels, so I'm not going to reflect on them anymore. Other than to say that as per the requirements of the Code of Conduct's panel determination, I offer my unreserved apology to the Lord Mayor and to the Council for the reasons outlined in the panel's report.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Moving on to the item, the item that's come in from the closed.
Future of the taste.
Yep, thank you, Alderman Briscoe. So whose committee is this?
Alderman
Councillor Sherlock.
Sherlock, yeah.
So Councillor Sherlock, would you like to introduce this item?
Yep, great, thank you. So the recommendations are there already from 1 to 5, but just as a brief overview again, the Taste began over 31 years ago as a food and wine event and has grown in reputation and stature to be the largest annual single showcase of the Tasmanian food and beverage sector. The break in the delivery of the Taste last year provided the opportunity to revisit the commitment the Council made in 2019 to consider the future of the Taste. Consultation with a selection of the Taste stall holders and hospitality industry stakeholders has been undertaken to ascertain their views, and this consultation revealed the almost unanimous view that the time has come for the Taste to transition out of council ownership. It was noted during this consultation that the Taste had grown to such a high level of state significance that it was no longer reasonable for City of Hobart ratepayers to underwrite the event to the level historically done. There were very varied opinions about a transition timeframe or the best future governance structure, but almost all stakeholders agreed that this pause in the running of the event offered the ideal opportunity to give consideration to moving the event away from the City of Hobart ownership. I'll just put the motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, so that was seconded by who? Councillor Dutta? Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I was given someone tried to give me a lesson in words a little while ago. So maybe it's my Italian here, or could be my not understanding words. But point 2, Lord Mayor, I've got to say maybe the words are incorrect, but I might. I'm happy for Teacher Briscoe to let me know otherwise. The words say, the council delegate to the Chief Executive Officer the authority to develop a transition plan. I don't believe we need the words like that. I think the words should be very simple. Is the Chief Executive Officer develop a transition plan to divest the city of exclusive ownership for the delivery of the Taste, and a further report be provided to council. I don't think we need to use the word delegate. Delegates normally is when we give the general manager or the Chief Executive Officer the option to go and make a decision and do things on that. I think the wording needs to be changed, and I so move the amendment that the council, the wording should be the council, the Chief Executive Officer develop a transition plan. So the words the council delegate to are removed, the authority to be removed, removed. I also move the amendment, Lord Mayor, because I don't think we're delegating the General Manager to do anything.
Okay. Seconded by Alderman Briscoe. Did you want to speak to that amendment in particular?
Are you calling me, Lord Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, it is a sad day to see an event that the council has operated for 31 years to basically make a decision, presumably tonight, that we don't wish to run the taste again. We would have some intellectual property in the name Taste of Tasmania. So I don't know whether own or deliver the Taste of Tasmania, but we would have obviously intellectual property rights around that name, and whether in the transition plan, if it gets passed, this motion gets passed tonight, then that would be part of the transitioning. Look, of all the people that have been involved, we've got to thank all the stall holders over the years, all the entertainers, and obviously the public of Hobart who've subsidised it, in particular in the recent years, to over $1 million each year. It has been the principal festival for summer for Tasmania and Hobart for so many years now, and I know a lot of people from interstate, and when we used to get international visitors, they used to come to the taste as well. So it is a sad, sad day for Hobart, City of Hobart, but I do agree with the reasons why we need to move on. A few years ago, the city looked at various proposals to transition out of it, and at the stage we thought we could continue to run it. But look, all I can say is if it's viable for a private operator or a government instrumentality or small business group, then I'm sure that if they approached us for sponsorship money, then we would favourably look at that. But at the moment, all I can think is that we did have the anniversary, the 30th anniversary, was it a year ago? And it was basically the last swan song for it. And because of COVID, obviously this year's ones was 2021 was cancelled. But I do feel a sense of sadness of something that's lasted 31 years, that it's now, it could be over for us anyway, the City of Hobart. And thinking of all the great times I personally have had there with family and friends, and I know a lot of people in Hobart have as well.
Alderman Thomas.
Reminded us something about going out not with a bang but a whimper. I actually think that we need to be very prepared for a front page on this, and that's fine. That's what journalism is, and that's what democracy is. So is it the Lord, I assume, Lord Mayor, you'll be ready because there'll be a lot of people with that. There's nothing here we often have in these matters where we are going for something called a revolution, which this is what this is. We normally have a couched up, the Lord Mayor or the General Manager, whoever's going to be involved, has to be very much prepared for an outcry. We're not saying it's because of COVID, we're just saying it's time, but I don't think the community is in any way, shape or form ready for this, what I suspect will be a front page tomorrow or the next day, but good luck.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, I'd like to also commend the work of taste stallholders, festival directors. We've had some amazing festival directors over the years and staff who've worked really hard in relation to making this the best event that our city could provide. It's been a phenomenal 30 years of a festival. Festivals don't often last that long in this sort of guise, particularly run by a local council. So we've provided so much as a city to that wonderful time in Hobart at the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, when the Sydney to Hobart boats come in. And it's just a phenomenal time. Now, let's hope that doesn't end. But I mean, the taste and amazing people like Fred Peacock have been involved, and it's been set up over many years and had many an elected member involved with it. And I just want to bring to mind the importance of the reputation of the taste. It was really important over many years to keep that as pure as possible. And I remember the time when we were looking at sponsors, and it's not an easy festival, partly because it's a controversial festival. It wasn't, or sometimes brought into controversy, but quite often we would look to find sponsors. And I know, Mr. Short, you've probably done a lot of that searching in your time, and your staff have done an amazing job to try and find sponsors. And it's been very difficult. And I remember we had an approach at one stage to have Tamar Ridge as a sponsor, and at the time Tamar Ridge was owned by Guns, the infamous company that is no longer, and it was.
They were a sponsor.
No, they weren't.
Ridge.
No,
Oh,
no, we.
Tamar Ridge was a sponsor.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I think that we.
No interjections, please.
Oh, the taste.
Yeah, of the taste. No. So there was quite a lot of controversy and a very good awareness raising at the front of PW1 in relation to that. So hats off to all of those people who've been involved, those people around this table, the staff. I know it hasn't been an easy thing to deliver. It's taken up so many resources, and thank goodness that we've had a chance to reset and to rethink about this. This time 2 years ago, I really didn't want to say, I didn't want to let go of such an iconic event, but I think given what opportunities, compromises, whatever you like, a pandemic has thrown at us, we've had a chance to reconsider this, and I think this is the right decision for this council at this time.
Further discussion, Councillor Dutta.
Lord Mayor, thank you. I just want to acknowledge the councillors who have been involved in this. I think you have done a great job, and Taste of Tasmania was quite an iconic thing. And many people came to the city. I remember when I first came, it was just throwing bottles, and it was a very different scene. But when the Taste of Tasmania came in, it just gave it a different feel to the whole thing. So I want to thank the councillors who have been involved in this. Not only them, but also staff and all the supporting staff who have been doing this. And like most of us, we do have to face up with our mortality. And one day it'll have to cease. And I think maybe this is the good time for us to make this decision. So once again, thank you for everybody who has contributed to this.
Further discussion, Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I also don't make this decision lightly, but I do think it's the right decision. I think
Somebody mind just turning off their ding? There's a constant ding happening. Just receiving messages ding. Sorry, Councillor Harvey, please continue.
But I do think the Taste has outgrown the capacity of the council to continue to run it. So I am comfortable with the decision to let the CEO develop a transition plan to help work out the future of the Taste. The officers have worked closely with the taste industry to come up with a report. So I'm confident that the work's been done and that this is a good decision, and that the Taste won't be gone, it'll just be different into the future. And I don't know where it'll end up, but the Taste is not over. It'll just be reincarnated in some other way, and hopefully it will live on for a long time into the future, and it will continue to highlight the produce that Tasmania produces, that it'll continue to attract huge crowds, that it won't lose some of the fundamentals that has made it the Taste that everybody in Hobart has come to love over 30 odd years. So I look forward to where this heads, and I look forward to going to the Taste for many years to come.
Other discussion? Any further discussion? I think I should probably say a few things as well, just echoing, I think, the comments that others have made. But I do think, COVID has changed many things, and this is one of them. I think Alderman Thomas, it may have been something that people were thinking about. The council's had a lot of pressure on it from a whole range of players to say, the council's got to share this and open up and involve others and not hang on to it so closely. So that's been a message to the council for many years. But now, because of the scale of the event, the uncertainty of the event with COVID, and obviously the very significant hit that COVID's had on our finances, it is something that we now have to deal with. It is a very sad decision, but I do hear and acknowledge Councillor Harvey's sort of optimistic tone that there will be something going forward. I note 2 and 3 obviously is going to be some really serious work with people that are interested in seeing a taste style event continue in Hobart in the summer period. It may not go for as long, it might not be in that particular location, it might have a different fresh new look and feel. That's okay. But 2 and 3 is basically us saying to the community, we're still interested and we're still going to be an important partner in this event, but we're really going to appeal to partners and industry to help us take it forward to its next chapter. Item 4 is important too, because it's I think people need to be reassured that we'll still try and invest at the end of this year in waterfront activation. So we don't, the taste didn't just bring food and produce, it also brought entertainers and more space for people to enjoy the waterfront, and we'll certainly still be investing in that because that's a really special part of Hobart in summer, both for visitors and for locals. So I think that's an important part of the resolution, that we aren't just saying that there's going to be no activation and activity on the waterfront during this coming summer. And number 5 is important too, because the state government did previously contribute, after a lot of work from a number of people, did decide to contribute $250,000 to the taste, plus the cost of the PW1. And I think it was plus or including? Plus. And when I did meet with the Premier a few months ago, and he's made a verbal commitment, and it's in writing as well, that the state government will continue its commitment to a summer event on the waterfront that focuses on Tasmanian food and wine. And so it's really important that we do approach the government soon after they are fully elected to ensure that they honour that commitment, because it is a really important one. And in the new chapter of the taste, we'll be a partner. That state government commitment will be a really important part of that partnership as well, with the other sort of hospitality industry folks that want to take it forward. So all in all, it is a significant decision. It is one of the big changes that COVID has brought to a head, but I think with a lot of work and passion, the City of Hobart will still be an important partner in the next chapter of whatever the taste looks like next. Thanks, everyone. So, Councillor Sherlock, did you want to sum up at all? We have an amendment.
Just to change the words a little bit.
Okay, so that's to change number 2 to read, the Chief Executive Officer develop a transition plan to divest the city of the exclusive ownership and delivery of the Taste of Tasmania. So that was moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by Alderman Briscoe. Is that right? Alderman Briscoe?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'll put that amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Now I'll put the substantive motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Carried. Oh, sorry. Show of hands. All those in favour?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Alderman Baracus, did you have? Yeah, Alderman Baracus, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Alderman Zuko.
Okie doke. So we now will move to the closed portion of the meeting.
If that we move that.
So I'll put that we're moving to the closed portion of the meeting. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. So that's the end of the open portion of the meeting.